to is how can we best think through education's role throughout the state of transforming the success of our students. So in that regard, what happens is we have 4 key focus areas within the strategic agenda. This strategic agenda began in 2010-11 and runs through 2014-15. So keep that in mind. And you'll notice 2 really key components of that were college readiness and student success. And I can tell you that research has been embedded into all the work on college readiness and student success, and certainly efficiency and innovation. This is one of those innovative times in terms of developmental education. In college readiness, the strategic agenda had 3 key areas, and I'm a little surprised that Aaron didn't talk about the 3rd one, but I can tell you there's some great things going on around teacher effectiveness, school leaders, what we can do to connect our post-secondary teacher preparation systems with K-12 and with readiness issues as well. So all of that's a part of it. But we're here today to talk about really the first one, the increase the number of college-ready Kentuckians entering post-secondary education. And I will say our focus has been on recent high school graduates. Almost all of our measures of student success and entering college ready have been looking to those recent high school graduates. They're the captive audience, but we really need to think through those adults returning to our campuses in all cases, but especially within our community and technical college system. And you know that far better than I. So we have 4 unified strategies for college and career readiness. I know most of you have seen these before, but we'll just review them quickly again. The first one has really been effective in promoting the second. So the first one is accelerated learning opportunities, expand access to advanced placement and international baccalaureate degree credit, but also dual credit opportunities. And I know that some of you are well aware of the work right now that around our dual credit efforts and providing greater access to students in high school to dual credit, to credit that's going to give them credit in college that will apply to degree. And so we're having some great discussions. It's probably going to be a revision. It is going to be a revision in our current statewide dual credit policy, but lots of other things going on there. And then looking at how that all fits together, how advanced placement and dual credit, how that all fits together with the way our post-secondary institutions work with our K-12 institutions, or our K-12 schools. And the second one there is secondary intervention programming, and this is where I just have to give so many kudos. It is when we know in high school, when students are just not meeting those targets that we have set for readiness. And our targets are pretty arbitrary. We all know that, the placement piece. But there are still some key ways that they do help us talk about what readiness means. And without something that is concrete to talk about readiness, in Kentucky we went far further than most states, and that is that we described readiness not only in terms of a number, but also in terms of learning outcomes. So that's been pretty important. Sometimes we let the outcomes get in the way of progress, and that's something we're going to have to think through. And then the other areas are advising, and I talked to you about operation preparation and so forth. Those have been really important advising programs. And an individual learning plan. Every student from grade 6 forward has an individual learning plan in Kentucky if they're in a public institution, and most of our private schools are using these as well. But they give us a link to know and better understand kind of the pathways our students are wanting to take. And so we're trying to think through how can we use that information at the post-secondary level as we admit students and as we advise students. And so that's been really important as well. I want to show you something, and you are the first post-secondary group in the state to be able to see this graphic. And it is a graphic of the work that Bruce referenced when Kentucky is used as a national model. This is some of the evidence that we have that our work on standards, our work on intervention programming, our work on accelerated learning opportunities and advising, this is our evidence that that work is moving forward. I want to say to you that, in 2010, we started out at 34%, and now we're at 62.3%, and that's a 34% gain in the number of students exiting our high schools that are college or career ready. And that's been very important. And I often get, okay, so how many of these students in 2014 were career ready? They didn't meet our readiness benchmarks for college, and some people think that's a lot of this group of students, the 62.3%. But it's really not. It's less. It's about 6%, just over 6% of the students that are career ready. But career ready in Kentucky is really important because they had to have taken 3 career and technical education courses. They had to met assessment benchmarks on at least 2 assessments, or have some credentialing that gives them a workforce certificate that is nationally recognized. So these students are college ready, and so when we're talking about that group that we really want to put into the credit-bearing courses, I have confidence in that group being able to go into those credit-bearing courses. And this is some work from previous, but we wanted to see how much the intervention programming was contributing. I don't have the 2014 evidence yet, but what we do know in Kentucky, even for the 2014 graduates, was the number who met our ACT benchmarks of readiness increased. And we were one of the very few states in the nation that saw ACT increases in all 4 areas, in English, math, reading, and science. And most other states were flat, or in some cases, they went down, and in Kentucky's they went up. So our work together with our K-12 partners is really working. And also, just so that you see the intervention course and where the intervention course is making a difference, what you see are really large increases in the number of students going through high school, especially our senior year intervention programming and that curriculum, and then moving to readiness based on benchmarks, by the way, that many in this room were a part of setting. And I think, just seeing something is a picture of something is 1,000 words or more. I want you to look at the next 3 slides kind of in sequence. Yellow is not good, red is bad, okay? But look what has happened over a 3-year time frame in Kentucky of students and their readiness. And this means they met all college or career readiness benchmarks, not just one, but all 3 content areas. We have made great progress in our state in the last 3 years, and we continue to get evidence. The evidence that we get and try to better understand, and I want you to look at the dark portions of this map, okay? They are the counties in our state that have the lowest readiness rates in mathematics. If we don't continue to monitor this, we don't know where to focus our efforts. Look at the dark, and you'll almost see a circle. It goes into western Kentucky and certainly in eastern Kentucky. And here it is for English. Does that look too much alike for you for comfort? It does for me. So when we go into schools and districts and when we work together on this readiness, many times it's not one thing or the other, it's both. And so, work together as teams. This is not about remediation of one thing. It's about making sure that we create the opportunity for students to demonstrate readiness in multiple ways, but we have some key areas we have identified and that we know we need to work with. And, by the way, Murray is working with Eastern Kentucky on some dual credit modeling. Did you know that? So we're not talking about stay in your little zone. We're talking about getting way outside of your zone. And this is what happened. This is new data as well. Remember that we're always a year behind in our post-secondary data in measuring what's happening. But look what happened to the readiness of our recent high school graduates, the ones who entered our post-secondary institutions. And these are specifically the ones who are entering degree programming. This target was actually, the 76% was actually for 2014-15. So, and our agenda is going to look at 13-14. But look at the increase there from 52%, and this speaks volumes, from 52% to 68.3%. And we're one of those states, I think, that do a really good job of using our P20 database system to look at these students and their progression. But then, do you know we can also look at them in the workforce? And so we're able to track these students not only from our K-12 systems, but all the way through the workforce. So we're making progress. So in developmental education in Kentucky, we were looking at promising practice. Our college readiness leads, that group, we had a larger group, probably about a year ago now, that met and worked with some national folks on what we would like to think more fully about in accelerated learning opportunities and in reforming our developmental education programs. And so in those discussions, these were kind of the three key elements: remediation based on a student's need, just in time sort of remediation, aligning content with course and major requirements, pathways. You've heard some great things here today about pathways, and I would even offer one additional pathway to the ones that we've talked about so far, and then access to credit-bearing course with academic support. So, and how do we do it? So one of the things in the 1 o'clock and 2:15 sessions today that I would love for you to pay particular attention to and to ask questions about is, what are those academic supports that have made a difference? What do they look like? How did you implement them? And get as specific as you can. Right now in Kentucky, only 3 out of 10 students have access to any sort of credit-bearing course that has academic supports. That's not enough. We know that. So we've had several teams working with Complete College America, but also just within our state, of thinking about what are some of the principles we want to guide us as we move toward these transformations in developmental education. And the first thing that always comes up, as well it should, is that when we make these transformations, we want to make sure that the rigor and relevance of our college credit-bearing coursework, it's always evident. We are not losing that relevance. We're not losing the rigor of those courses. We are meeting those learning outcomes. And that's something that I think with all of this, ask them how they maintained rigor and relevance. The second thing is entering a defined program of study without a defined program of study or pathway. And what kind of default should those students be guided to? And it's typically a general education pathway. If they're at a 4-year institution or in a degree pathway, But if they are in a pathway that is a credentialing pathway, whether that's a diploma or a workforce credential, then that has to be considered. And I would ask you to look at your campus and look at your requirements and prerequisites on those courses and see what still makes sense and what does not, and then how to put that together into credit-bearing coursework and supports. And then this is the other thing, and I think we heard about it from Austin P. and certainly from Colorado and Idaho, and that is the progress of these students must be monitored. So how are you going to monitor on your campus? Think through, and the guiding principles document is in your folder, by the way. I wanted to make sure that you had access to that. So in your folder there is a guiding principles document. And this is one that was had come about through lots of discussions, both at a national level and at a state level where we had representatives. But this was what Kentucky wanted to emphasize as guiding principles for transformation. And then the academic supports for students not meeting benchmarks, we talked about that a little bit, and we must define and communicate those not just to a person teaching a course, but to your advising staff, to your administrative staff. I heard in the hallway, this was, the people in this room want to better understand transformation, if not do the complete transformation at scale on their campus. But in one case, there were administrators on the campus that were holding this back. My guess is that's about money. It's about FTE and how many FTE that are generated through our developmental education courses. That's not good enough. That's not about the student. That's about something else, and we need to be about our students, of course. And then an institutional plan for students who are not progressing. What are you doing on your campus if a student is in a major that there doesn't seem to be a good fit? What are you doing on your campus that is intentional, not that's haphazard or your advising staff don't know what to do and they're just guessing? What intentional action steps are you going to be taking on your campus to work with that student and get them in a program where they can progress to a credential or degree? So please think through that. All right, there are a lot of these. I won't go through all of them. I do want to pull out just a few. But the first couple here are really important about placement, and it's exactly the same thing that you heard from Complete College America, but also from these states who have done this work and are really feeling good about this work in their states. And that the default placement for all students not meeting any benchmark that you currently have in place should be placement into a content area credit-bearing course. And, that should be default. Now, I've got another set of slides for those students who are very low. So I'm talking about the ones right now, especially the ones right now, that are just that one course below, which I know on my campus is almost all of our students who are not meeting benchmarks are just one level below. That tends to happen at the universities. At our community colleges, not so much. But at our universities, it does happen. And then embedded. Embed. You have models where you have a co-requisite course that's offered at the same time, a developmental course that's offered at the same time alongside the credit-bearing course. And what I would say to you is if you can do that, you can embed those particular concepts and skills into that credit-bearing course. So, the people from Kentucky who have discussed this at length have talked about using the embedded method versus the two-course model at the same time. There were even some specific recommendations. These are not mine. I mean, people think they're mine. They are not mine. I am a scribe. Okay, so my job is often in these meetings being a scribe. Courses that are embedded with remediation should not exceed 4 hours. Okay, that was from faculty. That was from staff across institutions. And then the quantitative reasoning courses linked to programs of study and pathways, that's absolutely critical. We're talking about, Bruce, a new pathway that I didn't hear talked about today, but that's probably because in our community and technical college system, we have so many credential-seeking students. They are not degree-seeking students, but credential-seeking students. And that's wonderful and fine. Those lead to, to jobs that earn the living wage, that these people are doing very, very well. So we're talking about building a foundational mathematics pathway course that would look at the different credentialing pathways and build a single course around it. Now, in some cases, our KCTCS system already has such a course in place, but think about now, how do you embed those concepts into the credit-bearing courses, and that may be something that's a little different. Although I know with your accelerated learning opportunities programs in our KCTCS system that many times those were always embedded into coursework. And then a statistical pathway. That's not something we have yet in Kentucky, and it is something that we are working toward. Paul Blankenship will be leading a lot of that work in Kentucky, so that's wonderful. For students who have and I don't even know how to say this, okay? These are words on a page that need to be modified. But for low readiness indicators. Now, I don't know what that means, because to me, they right now would not be placed at that course that's just below the credit-bearing course. I guess one of the other statements that I really enjoyed today, some of these things just really hit home, and the whole point of our developmental education programs always has to be to lead students through that credit-bearing course. And I just think that that's a really important way to start thinking about these courses, as they are not the end game. They are the begin game, and when we can embed them, then they become part of the moving the student to credential or a degree in a whole new way. And even for students who are way below any benchmark, in Bruce's bell curve, that far left portion of that bell curve, not more than one credit-bearing course in the content area, not more than one. And for literacy, those should always be one course. So combining the reading and writing, I think that's new and territorial for us in our state. And I think we have to think through those challenges, and I think we have some people here that can help us do that. So in terms of transforming your program, this is kind of, if I have to give a 4-step process, okay, everything in mathematics, being a mathematician, you're just kind of a little weird. You got to have 4 things. All right, so conduct a policy study and practice, not just a policy study, but a practice audit. I think what we do in policy and what we do in practice are sometimes 2 very different things, but identify any barrier, policy or practice, for the implementation of accelerated or co-requisite program models. And I can tell you on my campus, we have some policy in place that's barrier. And trying to get rid of that is not easy. But practice is really easy. Practice is a change in what we do day to day. So I think you need to understand the practices on your campus and what you're encouraging as practices on your campus. And then professional learning opportunities, I think we heard the great benefits of that. I tried to list out all of those that are out there. I didn't put the tutoring staff, the people that are work in your support centers like tutoring. That was a neglected element, so please put that in there. And then I just cannot tell you how much importance there should be on your campus of monitoring student progress, not only in coursework, but in things like persistence to the next semester, because in most cases, those very lowest students don't even persist to the second semester, let alone to the second year, let alone to the third year. So really looking at that monitoring, link any support we have to student success, make sure we create our benchmarks based on what we're doing now so that we can see progress and so that we can note that progress with our administrators and our faculty that we have to convince on our campuses. And then look at all the institutional evidence that we have available so that we can do this. I would like to say that the council has been very strong in supporting the efforts on our campuses. We've brought in national experts. We're doing that again today. But we've been working with campuses and going to campuses to talk about their current developmental education program models, the success and progression of the students. I really wanted to have campuses think through that. And I know many of you do this. This isn't something I have to tell you to do. It's something that you do. And not only in your content area, because you heard that reading and writing happens in every content area, including math. But how do we think through this, not only in our own content area, but in those related courses where these students are going to be going? And then the second one was the visits to the campus, where we looked at that and began discussions. This was 2 and 3 years ago on accelerated and co-requisite developmental education program models. I was trying to get some funding then. It took a little longer to get the funding than I thought. And our college readiness leads are just critically important in terms of understanding progress not only at their own institutions, but how it happens at other institutions, and hearing some of those best practices and programs and so forth. And then finally, Aaron mentioned earlier today about that CPE provided funding. And I can tell you, Complete College America supplied some of that funding. Core to College, Kim Arrington, every one of you that received a new grant within the last month or so, you can come down. This lady right here in, I don't know what color is that, Kim? I'm going to call it yellow, but that's not it. But you need to thank her, because Core to College funds did this. We had some council money through some Senate Bill 1 funds that we had, and that was also used. I was trying to dig up any pocket of money that I could to support your efforts on your campuses to create co-requisite or at least accelerated models. I really would love co-requisite models, but I get what I get. So anyway, and we had a great team. This is not one person doing any of this. This is a great team effort. And, work with your K-12 partners. You have wonderful K-12 partners. Work with those and work with anyone else that you can possibly work with to make sure that we are doing all we can for our students. Not for us, not for our practices on campus, not to, this is heresy, not to save a position, faculty or staff, because we love that person dearly, but because it's in the best interest of the student. And that's something that's really important.